Happy Monday. Welcome back on the gravel, my friends. It's our off week between Monza and Azerbaijan next week. A little bit of news for you this week. New segment we're going to try out this week as well. I think it's going to be pretty fun over here.
Elephant in the room, I got a haircut.
Raven got a haircut. I'm covering my terrible hair day with
Yes,
the Detroit
sir.
Pistons hat.
Life is good back here in Chicago. Here on the ones and twos, like always. We got Oliver with us.
I host this show if you didn't know already.
Yes, you do. Crazy enough. We both do here on the gravel. Starting off, thank you guys again for always listening, whether it be YouTube, whether it be on Instagram, whether it be anywhere you get your audio, your podcasts. Thank you guys. Check out our other shows. We got one last week until Good Morning Hockey comes back. Chicago Hockey Radio starts. And our other show, which I don't know if anyone else has announced, but I'll announce it here first. Forum Blues, a LA Kings based show, another hockey show for us, which we are very excited to give some love to the West Coast, because there's not a lot of stuff about the West Coast teams in hockey compared to what you got on the East Coast and specifically Canada. But we are talking about hockey on a F1 podcast, so let's reel it back in and start it off with our first point of the week being a very, very sad point. I know, Oliver, you have
one we've mentioned before on here.
We have a lot of feelings about this, and racing and car fans will all unite about 1 week, 5 days from today of recording the show. This Wednesday, September 13th. Let me double check. That's a Wednesday. I believe it is. Yes. No, it is a Friday.
It is a Friday, guys.
Friday.
That is a Friday.
This Friday, everyone
13th.
will be coming together and watching the Grand Tour. Literally one for the road.
This is Raven and I's classic binge show together.
Yes.
And I feel like this current season that we've been going through has had some absolute banger episodes. So to get our crazy news like a month ago that the show was going to be disbanding was extremely disappointing. But, I'll probably make a gin and tonic, sit there in my sorrows and watch the final episode with those three legends.
Did you hear Jeremy Clarkson banned the other two from going into any of his bars?
No.
Yes. I don't know why. I think it's a really funny power move if it's just him being like, oh, I don't want them there.
That's so funny because I feel like they're good friends
They're all
off the
bros.
show, That's so goofy.
But going back to things, we'll let you get this next point since it is your favorite person
Oh
in
my
the world.
goodness. It's every Ferrari fan's favorite individual, Mattia Binotto. He's recently told the media that Teo Porcher and Gabriele Bortoleto are some options for the last open Audi seat. I think this is a fantastic call from Mattia. We definitely heard talks of Valtteri getting that seat, so it's kind of a toss-up. But
This is where I kind of wrote the issue of them needing to kind of get someone off the Sauber's junior team, just because it does seem kind of like they're just investing money into nothing if they never bring anyone up.
I wouldn't even say it's that, but I think I also have the point of what's going to happen to the Sauber Academy once Audi takes over this team as well.
It's going to still be a Saudi.
You mean a Sauber?
Jesus, Sauber. Yes, it's still going to be a Sauber team. I imagine it's going to be a Audi. Maybe has some say in it.
Yeah.
Maybe has a little influence. Maybe they
rebrand the entire junior team.
Exactly. But I still do think Sauber is going to be the team or the entity that owns, because it's still
It's junior drivers.
just the program. Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
maybe this just becomes their team. Maybe Sauber just becomes the junior team entity, and then Audi is now your major team. Like, I don't know what logistics you can actually do for this, but I genuinely think that investing all of this money into people that you're never going to bring up, like Zane Maloney or Theo Porcher,
Yeah.
these are two people that you should definitely be going after. And yes, Gabriele Bortoleto is a very fine driver in the McLaren program.
I was going to say he's a McLaren junior. And why I understand them trying to go for Bortoleto over somebody like Pourchaire or Maloney, it's purely based on the fact that he's pulling an Oscar Piastri of going for back-to-back Formula 3 and Formula 2 championships as a rookie. So I could see why they might want to look outside of their own program. I mean, the Teo Pourchaire story is still crazy, given that Teo is a Formula 2 champion, and he's still really, really young. Zane Maloney, I feel like that's a very outside call. I don't think he's...
I mean, he's young.
He is,
that's
but
the thing still is he's still an F2.
Yeah, but I don't think Zane Maloney is anywhere near as dominant, or he just doesn't outperform other drivers like somebody like Gabriel Bortoleto does, or Teo Pourchaire. I mean, Teo Pourchaire started in Formula 2 when he was 18, and he was like immediately on the scene as a championship contender as a rookie. I mean, it took him a couple years to win it, and honestly, Fred Vesti should have won the title last year if it wasn't for bad luck. But I don't know. Part of me feels that the ship has kind of sailed on F1 for Teo Pourchaire. I feel like it very much is a Valtteri Bottas and Gabriel Bortoleto conversation at this point. Zane Maloney, he's not going to get talked about at all, unless he wins the championship out of nowhere this year, and that's not going to happen. So,
I don't know. I mean, we also know why Hülkenberg left Haas. Partially was because he didn't want to be a babysitter for a rookie driver, and I feel like if you're asking me, if I was in this situation, I would definitely rather have Bottas, an established driver who's, won races at other teams, rather than a rookie who's needing help to get comfortable in the sport, and maybe your driving style is now a little bit different from what you're used to as you're trying to maybe be a more consistent driver rather than being the gutsy driver that Hülkenberg seems to be.
yeah.
Like the dynamic of this team is now in question of...
Well, here's your other issue. You get a rookie now, or you realistically wait until multiple years after Audi's become an established entity. Because they're not going to throw a rookie into the Audi in 2026. That's not going to happen. So they either
there's
give
talks of them getting Bortoleto. So it's like...
But the difference is getting Bortoleto now and giving him a full season in the Stake Sauber it makes a lot more sense to give him a year to develop. In that crappy car XYZ than immediately putting him into this works team like Kimi Antonelli is. So, I mean, like George Russell, as much as his 3 years at Williams were terrible, just with the car that he was dealing with and the teammates that he was dealing with, he improved a lot as a driver. And that's why, in 2022, he was able to go in and beat Lewis Hamilton immediately. That's why you need to give somebody like Gabriel Bortoleto, who's so young and has so much potential, room to learn before, having the pedigree of being part of such a big program. You're not just going to throw him into the Audi Works team day one.
I understand. I agree with you. I mean, it makes sense, but they're in a really weird position now. And it's going to be interesting to see how they end up
I think the best
issue.
deal is you go for Valtteri.
Yes, I like...
You give him his 1+1 deal that he wants, and 2 experienced drivers going into a brand new works team is what's necessary.
Yeah, I think that's your best case for success.
Because, okay, my great example for this, Haas 2016, you have Romain Grosjean and Esteban Gutierrez. Romain is fantastic in that 2016 Haas. I think besides 2018, that was his best year in the Haas. If I remember correctly, he scored 20 some odd points and Esteban Gutierrez scored nothing. And Gutierrez, it was after a hiatus. He was out of the seat for a while. He was still classified as a very inexperienced driver, and it's in a brand new team, and he gets slapped by his, experienced teammate. I'd much rather you put, if Haas had Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean from day one, I would have loved to seen how their 2016 season would have turned out. So I think that's I think that's completely fair. I think you go for the experience of Valtteri at this point. You know, I would love to have Gabriel in the seat, and I still think that's what's going to happen. But I think Valtteri is the safer option, you know, when you're taking on so much uncertainty as a new works team.
Yeah.
Finito.
Beautiful. Great way to finish it. Adrian Newey is back in the hot seat with more news about him going to Aston Martin. Nothing's official yet, but we're getting more and more reports about what it could be. I mean, I've been reading anywhere from 25 to 40 million a year, but I think most people have agreed around the 30 million a year mark, which is still a huge amount of money, man. That's still so much money. And I want to bring up Coffee Corner Media because he did make a lot of good points in a few of his posts this week that I genuinely think a lot of people are going to overlook. And how do you kind of wiggle that into your cost cap budget? And the way that he kind of announced it or explained was the possibility of Aston Martin bringing Newey as a contractor and giving him, I don't know the business or technical or financial term, but NSO, like some sort of options or shares in stock that, you know, later in this episode, I'll talk about why these shares are so important right now. But it seems like it's a loophole to kind of give him more money while paying him less for the actual work that he does.
I was going to say that, and those sales are with the, 25 to 25% of them going to.
We'll get there. Adrian, he still has to wait for his break to be over, to my knowledge, right?
Yeah, his gardening leave.
Gardening leave, which we
that
learned,
beautiful term.
Yeah, which we learned finally what it meant. But he is going to start to be able to work on maybe this year's car, but definitely next year's car for sure. And if you're Aston Martin right now, this is the time that you're trying to beef up your budget and really, really put all the money you can into,
It's also when you want to shift your focus towards next year as well.
Unlike some other teams that are on the grid that are unable to do so. But let's go over to the front flex wing talk.
Yeah, back to our favorite.
This is an issue that McLaren has been kind of under fire for under the last week,
as well
2
as
weeks,
Mercedes
3 weeks.
too.
Mercedes, but more so I feel like McLaren, definitely by Ferrari and Red Bull
standards.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. We've all seen it. If you look at old pictures and videos of their car from last year, even, they do have a style of it that's not as dramatic as the one that we're seeing this year, but it's way, way closer to the actual nose pod. But it still does have a little give to it that allows this flex wing to be beneficial enough to where they have made it a dramatic version. And yeah, other teams are complaining about it. FIA's recent statement on it, they concluded that all front wings are currently compliant with the 2024 regulations. But these small things, Oliver, I know you will agree with this.
Mm-hmm.
These small things that allow mid-season comebacks, if you want to kind of call it, or just at least more competition within the mid-season.
Yeah.
From these, I don't want to say loopholes really, but just little gaps in the regulations that you can take advantage of. Like, it really rings to the idea of Braun in the double diffuser and the fact that they started dominating when they were the only team that had it. Right when other teams started implementing this, that advantage was completely
They also
neglected.
ran out of money.
Yes, but that is beside the point.
I mean, that's like a big factor as well. Like,
It is.
It's their loss of money.
But they also didn't have a cost cap where they could just throw everything they had at it, where we can't get that anymore because of the protection of the cost cap. So when you're trying to compare the two, I do think this is a decent comparison in the fact that
I think that's fair.
This improvement by one team is going to force, Red Bulls and Mercedes and McLaren, McLaren's already got it, but the other teams to really either step it up and try to mimic it or try to find a way to actually beat it.
Or get it banned.
Or get it banned, which is probably what will happen unless, it could be styled as active aero. I don't know. I'm not a car expert.
Oh, and how that filters into 2026?
Yeah, so it could be something that we actually see, but that might get difficult as another moving part. But
yeah,
I don't know. I think this is good for the sport in overall. Like the fact that we're getting 4 teams to compete and have multiple race winners that have won multiple times in 1 year. It's the first year since 1977. And
that we've had multiple race winners from 4 different constructors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wild stat and makes you appreciate what we have right now. Like last year was total domination. And when we had Justin on last week, he said it perfectly, where if you thought about this at this point last year, how next season would go, you would say the same as last year, where Max was going to win everything. Maybe Checo wins a few in there.
Chuck your one random race winner of the year in, and I think you're good to go.
Yeah. But that is not at all the case. And it's beautiful to watch because we get better competition as fans, but also just a better product overall. Like, we haven't had a safety car
in
5
multiple
races.
It's been a while.
It's been so long. And that's a good thing in the fact that we're getting good, clean racing that is competitive, but also not dirty and dangerous.
It really feels
also,
like... Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I feel like this is a carbon copy of the 2009 season where Braun comes out punching, you've got Red Bull coming out punching, and then they slowly start falling back to the one team that's really figured it out. In 2009, that was Red Bull. In 2024, that's McLaren. And you still have your other race winners in there as well. It's honestly perfect.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch.
Like there's a possibility where Max doesn't win another race this year.
And that's a genuine possibility that also leads to the fact that McLaren could win. I don't know. Have you seen all the memes that have posted in the last 3 days of the released schedule or like released results of what's going to happen in the releases?
No, what did they say?
Oh, it's like just enough where Charles wins the constructors.
Oh, no.
But it's called
the
like
Delulu Charles Leclerc fans. I love all of you. You put me to sleep at night.
It's going to be interesting to...
I mean, okay, let's be real. Charles is only like 27 points behind Lando. He's pretty close.
We're not having this talk.
Guys,
I'm sorry to break it to you.
It's possible. Charles,
it's possible that I also get on the F1 grid this year.
Hey. All right. Well, we are going to some extremely strong Leclerc and Ferrari tracks these next few weeks.
I am stupid at Baku.
Okay, who's taken pole position there the last 3 years in a row?
I'm not saying you're wrong, but what also happens when Charles takes pole position?
He loses.
To Max Verstappen.
No, he just loses, period.
But mostly to Max Verstappen.
Like, dude, 2021. I don't know how he took pole position that year. 3rd best car. 2022 takes pole position in the best car, and then his engine blows out, a 1/3 of the way through the race. 2023, he takes pole position in the 3rd best car. And then Sergio Perez wins the race because the Ferrari was a piece of poo in the race. But Leclerc knows how to get around this track.
Yes. I'm not saying that he doesn't, but I don't trust these Monza upgrades until we see the next package come out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how they're going to do this weekend, personally. It's something I have later down the road in my predictions.
That's okay. But to keep it with Ferrari, now that we're on Ferrari, we knew Santander and Ferrari were concluding their 3-year contract as the main sponsor of the team. Carlos Sainz is the huge reason they're there. And it kind of shocked the racing world when it was announced this weekend when, this Wednesday, I apologize, that, after they announced their departure from being a Ferrari sponsor, they're now jumping into the boat of being a main Formula One sponsor starting next season. And it's going to last for 5 years. And it's going to be the official sponsor of 8 races, kind of like the Rolex is, I guess.
But that's where I'm like, no one knows if this is the Rolex replacement sponsor. Like, we could theorize that yes, they are going to be a title sponsor, but they're not getting as much money from Santander
than they are from Rolex.
So it's also shocking in the fact that yes, they are a huge sign sponsor. Now, is it because he's going to Williams that they are hesitant to become a sponsor from this? Is there already a sponsor there that is, a competitor of them? What is the reason that they're not kind of going to the place that Sainz is not going?
Well, okay. So originally, like Santander, like where I remember that sponsorship the most was on the Ferrari in like the early 2010s when Fernando Alonso was driving for Ferrari.
Guess what? Another Spanish.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They sponsor, I don't want to say they sponsor just Carlos Sainz, but Spanish drivers in motorsports.
But why not do it for Aston Martin? Or then
I feel like the business potential of being a main Formula One sponsor is way more enticing than sponsoring Ferrari.
No comment.
I think that's a completely fair statement.
I agree. I just have no comment on it.
I mean, like, of course, with the HP sponsorship coming into Ferrari, Santander, they're not going to have as much. A
title.
Yeah, they're not. HP is the title now.
Yeah.
And then you have like Komatsu at Williams. I feel like that's pretty established now. So I don't think there's much room. And again, take the Formula One sponsorship deal.
True.
You're going to have your name plastered everywhere on the racetrack
for 8 races and both Spanish GPs.
Yeah.
So it's a win. I do see what you're saying though.
Yep.
Moving on, Ferrari, sticking with them, made a giant announcement on social media, basically announcing that they did not get Adrian Newey. Excuse me. And that some changes within the team's hierarchy are going to be made by the 1st of October. My bad. Loic Serra is the new technical director. Fabio Montecchi is in charge of chassis project engineering. Marco Adorno is in charge of vehicle performance. Diego Tondi, aerodynamics. Matteo Tognanelli. Great. I love Italian names.
Taniali. It might be Taniali.
There's Ninalli. Track engineering, Diego Iovanero. You can continue this if you'd like to.
In charge of chassis operations, Enrico.
Yeah. Have fun with that.
Galtieri will remain their PU technical director,
Power.
and lots of other key engineers received adjustments to salaries as they received significant offers from rival teams, but they chose to stay at Maranello.
Yes, that one's easy to pronounce.
I just wanted to take the piss on you.
I will just turn your mic off for the next point. I have the power to do so.
Please don't do that to me, Raven. I really thought it was getting turned off.
No, but I mean, all of this money is really just the money that they tried to get Newey with, essentially. Can we confirm?
I feel like we can confirm that. Ferrari is like they're a walk-in bank account. Yeah.
Especially after 2 more flags fly up.
That and just their classic legacy payment that they get from Formula One every single year.
70 million a year. Something ridiculous.
And no other team gets it. It's just
Williams gets
literally
one.
called the Ferrari payment.
Williams does get one. It's just quarter of it. It's like maybe 5 or 10 million compared to what Ferrari gets. It's basically nothing. But
Ferrari gets more money for existing than like the last place constructor gets for finishing. So messed up.
It's a great stat. But speaking about when we were talking about sacrificing cars earlier, this is where I was getting to, is the fact that Red Bull has been back in the news for the fact that they are putting more effort into fixing the RB20 and, quote, sacrificing the RB21's progress. And I think this is what the cost cap kind of was.
Which if you thought Red Bull was coming back next year, no, enjoy what you're seeing right now.
Because this is the best we're going to get, in my opinion. But this is these tough situations are kind of what the cost cap was meant to give teams. And essentially, they're in a really tight situation of not having enough money to set aside to start working on next year's car. But rather than having an unstable car that, according to Max, has had problems for multiple race weekends now.
And apparently Checo's been complaining about it for way longer than Max has.
It's not just one driver. It's both drivers. And if Checo, I don't want to say this is a whole excuse for him, but we know that this car is more tailored to drive to Max. So if Checo's having problems in it and he's trying to attempt to drive like Max, I can see where there's a lot of fall off. I'm not going to, stomp on the guy.
Yeah.
But you pair this with the fact that they're struggling and McLaren still has a real shot at both championships this year. It does kind of get interesting that, they are doing this move. They are putting all their eggs in their basket right now to win this, which then becomes the issue of other teams' cars are going to be better than the Red Bull, and now Red Bull's fallen off the top spot.
And it really reinforces the fact that Red Bull knows if they keep with this trajectory that they're on right now, that they will lose both championships. And I actually admire the fact that they're willing to sacrifice next year's car to make sure they still get both championships this year.
I 100% agree. I mean,
and it leaves the door wide open for other teams like Mercedes and Ferrari to really take over Red Bull's spot next year.
Maybe even smaller. Like
maybe even Aston Martin.
I would say Aston Martin. Now that you get Newey, that's a huge problem. Maybe Williams steps it up after becoming.
Maybe Alpine gets Mercedes engines and
Audi.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of possibility for a really big switch up in the grid, and I think we're all here for it.
Oh, I definitely am.
It's gonna be different enough to give us something new feeling compared to, the Red Bull dominance after the Mercedes dominance, after the Ferrari. Like, this is the chance that we get a new dominant era or an actual competition era where multiple teams will be battling it out for first every year.
Yeah.
And with the new regs comes a whole new issue. So it really is going to be interesting over the next 2 years to watch this sport, in the fact that there's going to be teams that we are going to be shocked at. There's going to be drivers that maybe not were on our radar, or were going to be the top driver of the year coming out and being in this position. What the hell are you looking at?
Nothing. It's literally like schizophrenia. Don't worry.
Great. We're losing Oliver, guys.
I'm so sorry, everybody.
I also want to pose the question of this being another major domino from losing Newey, where the question kind of is, what will Horner do, and how does this work with him there? Like, will there be a change? Will we see him be replaced in the next few years?
Christian Horner?
Rather than losing Max? Do you think Marco would rather lose Max to Mercedes because, God, Toto can't shut up about wanting to get Max every off week?
I don't know, though. Christian Horner's been there since that team's inception.
So is Marco.
Yeah, it's fair.
And Marco kind of, from our knowledge, wears the pants in that power dynamic.
But I feel like drivers always come and go.
Yes, but
Your
so do team
adversary
principals at a
roles.
point.
Yeah, that's fair. But I feel like your adversary roles have a longer tenure than most drivers do.
And is that tenure up is kind of where I'm hinting at.
I think there's potential, but who the heck do you replace him with?
Some young guy? I genuinely don't know. That
Just whip up another Formula 2 team principal like Oliver Oakes with Alpine?
maybe.
There's potential there.
Unless you have someone within the team that you're really trusting to bring it up.
Yeah.
I don't know, Mick. Maybe you want to stop being a reserve driver and be a team principal. I don't know, dude. I'm just throwing things out there.
Way too young.
Yeah, I just throwing things out there.
Okay, Raven.
Anyways,
That one was a bit too far. It's like Oliver Behrman, team principal of Ferrari.
yes, he'll do it. It'll be great. He'll do better than Matteo Binotto.
Matteo Binotto.
Yes.
Baguette Benito.
Yes.
Spinala. Next point.
All right, next point. Can Toto
Sorry,
seriously
guys.
shut up about trying to get Max to Mercedes?
So Raven wakes up on Sunday. He gave me a whole description of this happening. He opens his phone and he sees, well, first he had to, go through like his TikTok and stuff, XYZ. And then he sees that Toto is back in the media, as he does, talking about if we could get Max, it's a real toss up between Kimi and George. And of course he's, relating to, do we keep Kimi or do we keep George? What is he talking about? Like he's really showing how little he cares about George Russell and the fact that he could be out in the next few years if things, go his Mercedes master plan way. He just chucks George out like nothing.
It's so sad. Like you had him work and suffer at Williams for 3 years to finally come to Mercedes. And
he beats Lewis Hamilton year 1.
Year 2 loses. Year 3, meh. He's not a bad driver. He never did bad.
Yeah.
Personally. Like, it's just, he doesn't deserve this hate. He doesn't deserve this negative media out of nowhere where it's like, okay, dude, we get it. You want to care so much about the kid that you lost 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that you are still obsessed with him when you got personally what everyone thinks the next best person in
now
Kimi
he wants them
but
both
now he
on the
still
same
wants the
team.
other one. It's like I don't know. I don't have words for it. I just don't find it feasible.
I mean, dude, he literally has the guy who beat Alex Albon, Lando Norris, and Nick DeVries to the Formula 2 championship in 2018. The dude put the Williams on the front row in 2021. Like, give this guy a break. He took a win in his first year at Mercedes, the first year in which Lewis Hamilton didn't win a race. The kid is so good.
And it also just now becomes, where does he go? If he does have to leave Mercedes because Max mysteriously comes to Mercedes.
OMG, and then he goes to Audi.
George?
Yep. I mean, Carlos Sainz went to Williams.
I don't hate
Williams. Nothing is like out of the question.
I don't hate it.
I don't either. Hulkenberg and Russell together? That'd be insane.
My teammate was doing great. As he just throws it into the wall.
He just fully turned in on me. Yep. Once again, the most unsporting driver on the grid.
But this also is the issue of George is the main driver until Kimi gets comfortable enough to take that from him. But until then, Mercedes should be really banking on all of their points coming from George in next year.
Yeah.
I just don't think the slander is good for him. It really just shows how little he's appreciated at the team.
I mean, maybe, okay. I think what we do is we take next year and we compare it to Piastri and Norris last year and see how Kimi performs against George in the sense of, how well Piastri performed against Lando.
I like it.
Because Piastri took multiple podiums towards the back half of last year and a sprint victory in his first year. If Antonelli can do the extent of that in however good, the Mercedes is, let's see how it goes. I think that's how you have to treat it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? If Kimi Antonelli comes in and beats George Russell year 1, then you know what? Maybe Toto was correct. But I don't see that happening whatsoever. So I think Toto needs to take his medication. Keep the headphones on the head. Don't throw them on the desk.
Very demure, very mindful.
Get out of Jos Verstappen's DMs, and we're good to go.
On God.
Good to go.
Let's go over to the final thing that I added just this morning because I found it interesting. Another point that Coffee Corner Media, we're going to send him as much love as we can because he does great things in the world of journalism for F1. But he put it out that Aston Martin are selling a 20 to 25% share of AMR GP Holdings Limited, the parent company, to Excel, the U.S. investment company, and HPS, another investment firm. inside the United States. Now, the sale and stakes would be valued at around 1.5 to 2 billion pounds. That is a big deal, dude.
Yeah.
That means their company is essentially roughly $10 billion worth. So seeing this number, seeing these sales, it's big. It's really going to give Aston Martin that unlimited fund to make something that's going to be ultra competitive.
Yeah.
I don't know if F1 is going to be the only thing that, Newey works on over there, or if they're going to allow him the freedom of working on, their LMGT3 car or any other cars that they work on. But according to Sky News, Aston Martin has been advised by the Rain Group, which you might be familiar with as the British merchant bank company that worked on the sale of Chelsea and a stake of Manchester United to Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Mm-hmm. Like we said earlier, this is another way of just them trying to get around that loophole of how they can pay their higher employees more money without going over the cost cap. I mean, here in America, the way it works is if you got great lawyers and you got great tax, people,
the sky's the limit.
What this guy said. I wish
the only way is up.
I wish the camera was on you to just see you snap out of your trance.
I was not in a trance.
A little trance, but that's okay.
Maybe a little trance. I'm just excited for what we're going to be trying out this week.
I'm also excited
our new little
for
segment.
The other segment that you have no idea I have proposed, which involves you getting F124, but that's all I'm going to talk about.
No Chick-fil-A sauce.
No.
Okay.
But for this new week and new things that we are wanting to try in our episodes, one of them is going to be famous/memorable moments from the next track that we race at. For this week, that would be Baku, as Azerbaijan is 1 week away, less than 1 week away officially. It's going to be interesting. I know for me that we actually have a button here on our pads that relate to my favorite Baku moments.
Yes, my favorite pad that I do not have sitting right next to me.
Yeah, you don't have any access to it.
I would be spamming this button right now.
Do you want me to hit it once?
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
I am stupid. I am stupid.
Yeah, it's such a great calm. It was 2019 Q2 going into turn 8 on Baku, which is the little narrow turn between the castle walls. And he just clips the outside of it and mutters those famous words of,
I am stupid.
I am stupid.
It's so poetic. And
It's
he then
Leclerc's,
comes back and actually competes pretty well.
I mean, I was going to say, it's Leclerc's only real bad moment at Baku.
Yes.
He's always been so good there.
As he is qualified pole in the last 3.
I do think there is one better moment from Baku. If anybody, get your guesses in now. 2018 GP at the circuit, 1 year previous. We're under a safety car, driving our laps under the safety car, and all of a sudden, we're right out of the castle section, a couple corners past where Charles Leclerc had his famous moment. Roman Grosjean driving around, warming his tires. You have Marcus Ericsson behind him in the Sauber. I think Roman was running in 6th place in the Haas. This was obviously Haas's greatest year in the sport, where they finished P6 in the Constructors, had tens and tens and tens of points. And out of nowhere, Roman just drops the car under safety car into the wall. Very reminiscent of George Russell 2021 Imola GP. But what makes this moment so special, obviously nobody crashes under the safety car that often. That happens maybe twice every decade. But what made this moment so special was Roman comes onto the mic and he starts screaming into the microphone. And then his engineer cuts him off and he goes, I think Ericsson hit us. And then as he's saying this, it cuts to this perfect slow motion replay. of Roma just dropping it into the wall, and then they have like 5 seconds, and then Marcus Ericsson comes into frame. The dude was like 10 car lengths behind him. But what was so funny about it as well was everybody thought that was Grosjean saying that over the microphone. I don't know how people still, like, everybody reported that it was Roman saying that over the mic and everything. You know, if you've ever heard Grosjean talk, he doesn't have an American accent. Like, that was his race engineer coming over the phone and saying that. But it was just like, that moment is just so iconic. It's like one of the stupidest F1 moments I've ever seen in my life.
Otherwise, for famous moments at Baku, can't get away with talking about Lance Stroll's first podium in 2017 with Williams. I hope these new investors tell Lawrence that having his son on the team is a bad investment move. And yeah.
Funny enough, that podium in 2017 was also a near photo finish between Valtteri Bottas and Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll actually should have finished that race in second. And on the last lap, Bottas dragged him to the line and beat him by like 1/10 of a second. And it's so funny because I think it was like one of my favorite moments, like Lance Stroll radio moments. You know, he comes over the phone or the mic so excited, and he's like, "Oh, he got me, he got me, he got me." And, you know, you're not going to be mad. It's your first podium, whether it's second or third, it really doesn't matter. And he was just so over the moon. He like literally looks like a child on the podium, just like Max Verstappen when he won the 2016 Spanish GP. But that's probably one of my favorite Lance Stroll moments as well. I mean, taking that 2017 Williams to a podium was crazy. That was a terrible car. And he had Felipe Massa as a teammate. Like, should have been a world champion.
2018 Red Bull collision between Max and Daniels, our next memorable moment. What I put this as a huge turning point for Daniel's career, as up until this point, although he had won a few races at the beginning of the year, they kind of teamed with Max as being the number one driver, which kind of really upset him and made him kind of lash out here at Baku. This was the season that after this, he did move over to Renault. It becomes a great one, Raven. It becomes a question of, was this a big turning point in his career? Was this exact race a big turning point in his career? And, you know, him always coming out to the media and saying that I'm going to continue working for the F1, you know, the Red Bull spot. Does he have a chance to change? It's not even
like they were battling for the race win. They were battling for like 5th place in that race.
Yeah.
They were being very much outclassed by the Ferraris and Mercedes, which were the 2 best cars that year. The Red Bull was convincingly the 3rd best car on the grid that year. And they were losing so much time. They were fighting the whole race. And then it boils over like that. And personally, I believe that is the moment where Daniel really solidified his move to Renault. He did not want to be a number 2 driver to a teenager.
Yeah.
And I think that's completely fair.
Especially at a point in his career where he is at the top of his game, quote unquote.
No, I always respect his, like, a lot of people take the piss on him for leaving and going to Renault. Like, why are you doing this? Like, Red Bull obviously has a better chance. It's like,
but would you rather be unhappy at work or be welcomed?
Not even would you rather be unhappy, but do you want to be the number 2 driver to a teenager? Like, you're not being favored by the team anyway. So go somewhere where they're working on some big project, which Renault was at the time, and take that number 1 driver spot. And if the stars align, you're in a world championship winning team as the number 1 driver. Yeah. I completely understand why he did that. And I definitely think that was the race that really pushed him over the edge.
Going into the last point, we got the last 10 laps of 2021.
I lost my vocal cords during this race, actually. So, you know, you had the tire failures being a massive issue at Baku in 2021. You had Lance Stroll's tire exploding on lap 35 of the race, you know, sending him in the wall. He was actually going into the pits. He was like, you know, maybe a quarter mile from the pit lane, and then the tire just explodes, and he's in the wall. Massive crash. And then like 15 laps later, you have the exact same thing happen with Max Verstappen as he's leading the race, with his teammate in P2. It was going to be Red Bull's first 1-2 finish in years. And they ended up red flagging the race and saying that they would go for a 2-lap shootout for lap 50 and 51 to the end of the race. And it was just a very iconic moment. You have Sergio Perez on pole position with Lewis Hamilton alongside him on the front row. This was going to be the moment where Lewis could have retaken the lead of the championship from Max Verstappen at that time. But, you know, we get to this shot of the grid and Lewis's tires are just smoking. Like it is a plume of smoke
Way
coming
more
out
than
of
anyone else on the grid.
Nobody else is having this issue. And Lewis always does his classic thing. Here, I'll push my laptop up so you can see. He has his classic where he'll have his hand on the steering wheel here and his other hand will hang over the steering wheel.
So he doesn't accidentally downshift?
Yes, so he doesn't actually accidentally downshift. And during the race start for this 2-lap shootout, he accidentally pressed the magic button on the back of his steering wheel, which caused his brake bias to be turned all the way up to 100%, meaning all the brake pressure was going into just the front 2 tires into the first corner. So the race starts and he just spears off. And that was the race where, you know, it was the only race bar Italy where neither driver, you know, leading the champion or fighting for the championship that year scored points. It was also the race we realized Nikita Mazepin might be the GOAT. You know, beating Lewis Hamilton in a far inferior car, almost killing Mick Schumacher on the last lap of the race because ego. That race was crazy. I personally believe it might be the best race that we've ever had at Baku. I'd say only rivaled by 2018. That race was pure chaos as well. But yeah, like that was Lewis's. That's what I say lost Lewis the championship in 2021. I do not mean to bring up Abu Dhabi 2021, but everybody likes to moan and say the FIA stole, you know, the championship from Lewis Hamilton in 2021. No, he was just way more inconsistent, made way more human driver errors than Max did, more than he's really ever made in his career at Mercedes, at least. And that was the like main big rookie looking mistake that Lewis made, and it cost him the championship. That cost him a free 25 points. So yeah, every race at Baku is a banger.
On God, this year's going to be the best one, I think.
You got
personally
2 rookies going into that part of the segment.
Yeah, next part that we're kind of going to implement into our weekly schedule on the show is a rookie spotlight, and not in the sense of like F1 rookie of the week. No, it's going to be like people that we think have a very strong chance of being an F3 or F4 or F2.
Or just somebody who had a standout week. Like if we were to do this last week, I would have sat here and talked about Gabriel Bortoleto the whole time, which I already did.
Yeah. If we did this 2 weeks ago, I would have given it to the Formula One Academy winners, you know,
exactly.
Pulling and Pin. So it's just the people that we would like to give, you know, just a specific shout out to in the grand scheme of things of people that potentially could make it into the big, you know, 2022 spots in the grid.
I am kind of going with a cop-out answer this week. I did want to initially talk about Franco Colapinto, but then I realized I went back to the Formula 2 race, just the whole race weekend last year at Baku, and I remembered how Oliver Behrman essentially hit the grand slam of Formula 2 by taking pole position and winning both the sprint and the feature race last year at Baku. He, in his rookie year, was an absolute king around the streets of Baku. And now that he's having this random stand-in appearance for Kevin Magnussen, I think he genuinely has a very good chance of scoring points in that Haas. I don't want to say it's like guaranteed, but
I do think this is also the big test for him.
And that's what I was going to talk about with Franco Colapinto.
Yeah.
Where last week he had the track where it is easiest to debut at. It's the same thing that happened with Nick DeVries, and it completely screwed over Nick DeVries' career. I think if he debuted at any other track other than Monza, first of all, I don't actually know if he would have gotten an F1 seat. But 2, he would have had way less pressure on him because Monza was the one track Williams was good at all year. And then, he signs with AlphaTauri and they're expecting that from him every single week and destroyed his F1 chances. But when it comes to the rookies, specifically Franco Colapinto and Oliver Behrman, this is a very much more true test of their skill in a Formula One car. The wall is your enemy here. It is going to rip the tires off, slam in the wall. The race is over. Monza, it's gravel traps everywhere for miles. You are going to get punished for every single mistake you make around this track. Franco Colapinto's issue that he had in qualifying that cost him a spot in Q2 where he dipped the tire into the gravel. He would have been in the wall if this happened at Baku.
Safety car would have came out.
No, it was during qualifying.
No, but like yellow flag, they got to empty the track because they got to remove the car. Like those kind of mistakes at this track are going to maybe end your weekend early if it's that bad of a track or if that bad of damage, especially if it happens to a Red Bull or Williams or someone who doesn't have many spare parts anymore. We're getting to the latter half of the season. We are officially through 16 races, and some of these power units and technical engine supplies that some of these teams are at are going to make it even more interesting. I think people are forgetting.
Remember who was cooked last year by the walls at Baku? It was Nick DeVries and Logan Sargent. So I'm saying rookie spotlight. Look out for your 2 rookies of Oliver Behrman and Franco Colapinto. This is going to be a true test of their skill this week and just raw talent. Way more than Monza. Way more than Jeddah. Jeddah is a way more flowy track. The walls are still there, but the track flows much better. There's no super hard braking zones every 2 corners like you have at Baku. So look out for the young guns and do the exact same thing in Formula 2. Oliver Behrman won from pole position. He won from reverse sprint pole position, so that's P10 on the grid. This kid can keep it clean around Baku. I think we actually have a chance of points with Behrman this week.
Speaking of,
let's
go race predictions.
I will say really quick.
Oh, never mind.
Because I see comments about this. I've seen it all week. Everyone's like, what happens if Oliver Behrman, scores points in the Haas? Is he going to be represented in the Drivers' Championship twice? Like, are his Ferrari points and his Haas points going to be separated? No.
It doesn't matter in the long run of things.
He scored 6 points with Ferrari. Those points go to Ferrari and Oliver Behrman. If he scores 2 points with Haas, those 2 points go to Haas, and those 2 points also go to Oliver Behrman.
So in total, he's won 8 points.
He's won 8 points, 6 for Ferrari and 2 for Haas. He's not going to be represented twice in the Drivers' Championship. It's a completely different championship to the constructors. Just for those who don't know.
Valid. Now we can go on to race predictions. I have, shockingly, back-to-back street circuits. I think Perez actually makes a fight here. I think we will see him within the top 6 for most of the race, maybe even a podium spot.
There's a big human rights issue in this country, so Sergio Perez has a fantastic chance here. Turn the mic back. Turn it on.
It's on.
Okay. So
walking the line there, bud.
That is literally just a fact. Anyways, I do join Raven on the Perez podium train. I think he will be the lead Red Bull this week. One of the only times all year where he will be the best Red Bull. He's the only multiple race winner here. Shockingly, I have the last 3 years of pole positions at this track. Charles Leclerc, I have him taking pole again this year. The Ferrari is going to look good around this track, and Leclerc has been on an insane run of form recently. So expect the Scarlet Ferrari on pole position.
I really have no idea who's going to be taking pole this week. I don't trust Ferrari's upgrades, like I've said, until Shanghai, or until, God, not Shanghai. Is it? No. Is it Shanghai?
Shanghai for what?
After Baku?
After Baku is Singapore.
Singapore, thank you.
Shanghai was round 5 of the championship.
I'm sorry, I got confused.
It's been a long week.
It has been. Safety car, I know that's something both of us agree on. This track is so demanding and so small that any mistake is going to be costly. And if it's costly, there's probably going to be a safety car. Going off that, for me, I think this week for Piastri, it's really statement time. I think a lot of the McLaren talk of, who's the number one driver, which driver should they focus on. He's really going to be pushing as much as he possibly can to make the statement of, oh, I'm important too, and don't just throw me aside for, Lando and a constructor's win.
I will say, though, this is also the race weekend where they really need to decide. This is your last chance to decide whether you're going to sacrifice one driver for the other for the Drivers' Championship.
Or do you just set aside and push everything for constructors? Like, that is the other possibility.
That's what I'm saying. Do you have them work together
Yeah.
for the constructors, or do you heavily favor one driver for that outside chance at the Drivers' Championship? And that driver obviously being Lando Norris. But yeah.
You can continue to your next point.
I was going to say, Verstappen to finish off the podium again. I have my what's it called? My podium being a Norris, Leclerc, Perez podium. I see Max finishing in the top 5, probably P4 or P5, but I don't see him staying on the podium this week.
Alonso P7 incoming. I'm calling it now.
I don't know. I really don't.
I'm interested.
This year's been so difficult to gauge where the Aston Martin is going to perform every single week.
That's why it's either going to be 7th or 17th.
Yeah, like, and you have no idea. And you've had great Fernando Alonso qualifying performances this year. Jeddah was a great one.
All of these really small, tight tracks that have, not a lot of fast corners per se, but
also just not a lot of room for error.
Yeah, because most experienced driver on the grid. Wow.
Who would have thought?
I'm just going to pose these to also the audience, but some other things that I've thought out to do for us just as segments and stuff to show stuff to make things more interesting around here. One of them being agreed upon topic that we give our best 3 answers to and describe why. Basically being best F1 drivers from the 80s, 70s, 60s. Favorite upgrade or something along the lines of that, where we can just, sit here, talk about our thoughts on it. The other one being something that we could also post to social media, but the fact if we got F124 and run hot laps for the track that's upcoming, I think that would be funny. I think it would be something to be like, oh, I got this time over under how many seconds to the next person. Just something for us to go.
You and I duking it out.
Yeah, we know we have a great reputation of playing the
being
F1
uber competitive together.
Yes, but that kind of leaves everything for the F1 world today. We had WEC last week. We had WRC Greece today. Finished today, I should say. So I'm going to go over that real quick. But starting on Friday, we had Evans had to make a stop within the first 2 minutes of the stage and lost a few minutes because of a wheel change where Ogier takes some time up on Tanak, and Fourmeau is only up by 0.6 seconds and 0.8 seconds, respectively. Evans continues to have issues with the car and continues to fall back, ending stage 2 a whopping 5 minutes off the leader, finishing Friday just shy of 10 minutes from the leader. Katsuta also had a crash in stage 3, dropping him. Fourmeau also had issues again with his car. Both of them ended off 30 and 40 minutes off the day, and this was only day 1 to the weekend. Tanak and Ogier go back and forth the remaining rest of day 1 stages, where Daniel Sordo maintains being within 25 seconds for the rest of the day, finishing 21.5 seconds behind the Estonian, with Terry Neuville in 3rd. Going to Saturday, Sordo leads into the after the first 2 stages, where Neuville makes a massive comeback to take the last 3 stages and be in 1st at the end of Saturday. Before the last stages, both Evans and Gregory Monster retired their cars, both cars damaged as Evans rolled over and Munster hit a ditch in stage 9. Sordo in 2nd, Ogier in 3rd, Tanak in 4th, with Fourmeau and Katsuta are more than an episode of your favorite television show behind the rest. Sunday fun day, baby. In the last stages, Fourmeau rolled over and loses almost 28 minutes in the process, and he was only a minute behind Neuville at the end of stage 14 out of 15 stages. This gives Hyundai the 1-2-3 podium finish with championship leader Mattia Binotto taking the win with a completed time of 3 hours, 38 minutes, 4 seconds, with the Spaniard Daniel Sordo a minute and 34.5 seconds behind. Off the Belgian, and the Estonian Otanek becomes in a minute 20 seconds behind the Spaniard. Standings updates next week, because all of the retirements and all that stuff is very interesting. We also had WEC. Oliver, I know you watched some of it. I know we both watched.
That I did.
Some of the highlights together.
A very exciting race. Also, records broken this past week at COTA. But we had Ferrari getting 2 wins last week. Obviously, one being at Monza, and then we had the 6 hours of COTA with the 83 car, the AF course of Kubica. Holy
Schwartzman.
smokes!
Yeah, it's a
Oh my!
Schwartzman.
Kubica, Schwartzman, and Yi, after the number 7 Toyota Gazoo car was given a drive-through penalty for failing to slow sufficiently for a yellow flag that was waved to recover the number 94 Peugeot. That number 7 car with Conway, Kobayashi, and legendary F1 driver Nick De Vries came in second, only 1.78 seconds behind that with the drive-through penalty. This also marked the closest finish in WEC history.
Really? Wow.
1.78 seconds over 6 hours is incredible.
It's very fun.
The number 50 Ferrari came in third with Fuoco Molina and Nielsen. Then you had the number 2 Cadillac come in fourth, the number 35 Alpine in fifth. Massive props to them. Their WEC team is competing at the expense of Formula One for real. You had Porsche number 6 and number 5 in 6th and 7th respectively. The number 8 TGR car was given a penalty at the critical moment with the number 6 Porsche. And then for LMGT3, you had the heart of racing with the Aston Martin securing their first ever WEC win with a gap of 20 seconds over the Manthe Porsches.
Shout out Heart of Racing, because that is a sick team name. I'm not
And
gonna
a
lie.
disappointing retirement for the Iron Dames as well, with just a very weird dive bomb in the third sector of the track on the Corvette, and it just destroyed the back rear of their car, ripped the tire up, puncture, all that kind of stuff. It was just very goofy.
Continuing off the COTA standings, Toyota Gazoo Racing is in first with 147 points, with Porsche in second, only 11 off at 136, and Ferrari just 8 shy of the Germans with 128. This stat is fun, but all of the other teams combined are at a score of 130 points. Alpine in fourth with 37, BMW in fifth with 31, Cadillac with 29, Peugeot with 22, Lamborghini with 11, and Isotta
Fraschini, yeah.
has yet to score a point this year, sadly. You never like to see that in racing, but moving on.
Them and the Sauber boys.
We have the last thing from us this weekend being the event recap and the standing changes for Pro Spec and Pro Series for Formula Drift. For Pro, we have James Dean remaining in first place with 566 points. Odi Bacchus, after his win in Utah, is now in a clear second with 492. And Frederick Asabo in third with 436. For Pro Spec, Tommy Lemaire jumps into first with 296 points. Connor O'Sullivan drops to second with 270. And there's a two-way tie for third between Austin Matta and Cody Buchanan with 238 each. That will wrap it up from us here in Chicago. It's been a long week, but it's been a good week. We have more F1 content for you guys coming next week with the Azerbaijan GP. Oliver, do it to him.
Do it to him, baby. As always, subscribe. Out here on the left side of my head, as you all know, what's over here? Last week's video. Check it out if you haven't already. It's our Monza GP recap with our boy Justin. So we will catch you guys next time. As always, I appreciate you guys being out here. Thanks for popping out, y'all.
Bye.